If you have a means to give, be free to give. Don't feel like you're hindered or fearful that you might not have enough. When you think you're abundant, then you're successful, regardless of how much or how little you have. It's based on comparison.
Emerge Stories is a place where, as the name implies, you are going to hear stories. Stories from people all over the Philippines who have come from many different types of backgrounds, and especially people who have gone through struggles, people who have gone through the challenging parts of life. And I hope that these stories will relate for you in some way, that some of these stories will really land for you because these people have gone through probably just about the same thing you might be going through right now. Today, I am very excited to be joined by a good friend of mine named Lorna Bondoc. She is an all-around amazing woman. She was originally from Manila, now living in Cebu. She has a lot of experience in growing herself. She's somebody who's been really working both in her professional career, but also just on herself. She's been working on herself and learning about life and learning about personal growth for a very long time. And now she spends a good amount of her time helping other people, teaching other people things that she's learned. One of the things I love about her is that she's a very productive kind of an entrepreneur. She has a company called YOVEO Digital as a marketing agency. She does a lot of outreach and giving, and she's always doing conferences and teaching and a lot of philanthropic work. But she's also very good at being peaceful. She knows how to manage her own energy, and she's learned a lot about plant medicine and different things that help her to be a very, very, very grounded, calm, peaceful person that I think a lot of people could learn from, how to be both very successful in your career and also happy. But Lorna didn't always know how to do those things together, and you'll hear a little bit about that in this story. I know I want to have more conversations with her in the future because there's so much more that we can learn from her, and I'm just very grateful to be friends with her. Hope you guys enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Thank you so much for being here. I always recommend listening to these on 1.5 speed, maybe just to get used to faster conversations and be able to condense the learning into a smaller period of time. Thank you for being here. If this is inspiring for you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, click on the bell, and send this to somebody, or maybe share it in social media if you think it is powerful, as I do. Let's jump in. My guest today is Lorna Bondoc. She is originally from Manila, now lives in Cebu, but is back in Manila right now for the holidays. And Lorna is actually a really good friend of mine. I am really excited to have this conversation, and I've heard some of her story before, but I want to hear it deeper. And Lorna, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you, Eli. Hello and happy holidays. Thank you for having me. I was just so excited when I got that message from Glad. So thank you for having me on this episode. I've
Yeah.
been following your podcast, so a lot of interesting stuff. Thank you for doing what you do. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for being here and for those words. So, as you know, the kind of the purpose of why we're doing this show is that we want to tell stories from amazing people who are from the Philippines that have grown themselves because of the challenging things that they've been through in life and the way that they responded to them. So, really looking forward to hearing your story. So, just to kind of get us kicked off, why don't you tell us just a little overview of who is Lorna? If you met somebody and in the first 5 minutes of just kind of telling that person kind of who you are and how you became who you are, like what would your background story be?
Oh, wow. I'd like to call myself an adventurer. So that's a big question that got asked of me during a recent retreat in Vietnam. Who are you? Like, who am I? Besides my work, what I do, who I'm with, who my friends are, where I live, right? So all these things. But that's a deeper kind of question.
I love
But
it.
yeah, what I do, okay, so well, yes, I'm from Cavite. It's like 15 minutes from Manila, but I was born and raised here. And I moved to Cebu almost 7 years ago this year. And it was in Cebu that I have built a digital marketing practice. So that's what I do for a living, aside from teaching digital marketing to different organizations that have a need for upskilling and outreach programs. We design curriculums and modules for different types of people, different types of learners. And that's really what's the biggest chunk of my last 2 years. I work with a lot of social enterprises that
Nice.
support, yeah, learning and development. So I'm a big supporter of ongoing learning because I am myself. I'd like to think of myself as a curious cat when it comes to, okay, is this something new? And when I acquire this skill, can I teach it to others? So that's
It's
really my ethos for just, yeah,
teaching it
learn
to
something
others.
new every day. Yeah.
I love
Hmm.
it. I know you pretty well, so I get to see, I've gotten to see how much time you spend helping other people and giving back and contributing to helping other people learn and grow. And I think that's one of the definitely one of the things I appreciate about you the most from what I
Yes.
know. Let's talk about how did you become this person? I want to go back and so let's come back to the adventurer and the learning and the contribution in a bit. But first,
Mm.
let's kind of go back to how did you get to be who you are? And maybe let's go back to some of the earliest memories you have as a kid. Like, where did, what was your life like growing up? And what are some of the
Mm.
standout memories that
Yeah. Oh my. Thank you. That was a beautiful question. So, well, I'm in my hometown, and back in the day, in the late 70s, this was considered provincial.
right?
So it's not really the heart of Manila. Although I was born in Makati, we moved to Cavite in the late 70s. And farm life, rice fields and salt, like, whatever, salt fields,
Just
carabaos and whatnot. So I grew up, you would call it like a country exposure. So not a lot of advanced tech or television. We did have ration electricity. So at 6 o'clock, everything
yeah.
gets dark. And so gas lamps were a thing. And yeah, it was a simple life. And I spent a lot of time outdoors playing with other kids, the neighbors. I feel nostalgic just thinking about it. And yeah, so I studied in Manila. We were enrolled there. There were 4 kids. There's 4 of us, siblings. And it really had an impact on me growing up, being exposed to the practical side of things. We didn't really grow up showered with shopping sprees and
Mm.
dine outs, whatnot. It was really a family thing to be practical in the way we spend money. So
So,
yeah, we
so four
derived
kids,
four
and
kids.
which one
All
were you?
We were the middle. I have a twin sister.
That's
So I have an
of
older
course.
sister, then twins, and then I have a younger brother. But we were 1 year apart.
Wow.
So
So
went to school.
you're
Yeah, 1 year gap.
only 1 year between the oldest
Mhm.
and you two, the twins, and then the last. Okay.
Yes, correct. And my dad used to work with San Miguel Corporation. So it used to be the like retirement jobs. Like if you
Mm,
get in that company, you stay there
right.
for life.
Right.
But in the late 80s, we were all just preparing for college and we knew that there wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to support us all through college. So the family decided that my dad was to work abroad. And so in the early 90s, I think it was in 91 or 92, my dad left for Saudi Arabia. He's an engineer. So he worked there for 25 years.
Wow.
And so over here in the Philippines, it was us four going through late high school and then college. And
So
then
did your
still, yeah.
so your dad went to Saudi and your mom stayed with you? Stayed in the US?
Yes.
Okay. In the Philippines?
Yes. And my mom is like entrepreneurial. So to help ease the cost of sending 4 kids to college and for paying mortgage for a house that we haven't really paid yet. So I remember, I think we were in junior high school. She would ask us to prepare snacks like to sell in school. So we would go to school with our stuff and 2 bags of sandwiches each, right? So, and classmates would love it because my mom would bake stuff. She knows how to bake. So during the semester, we would be selling desserts, snack items, so that helped us earn some money for our allowance. And we brought leftovers from the house for lunch. So we didn't really eat out
Yeah.
then growing up when everybody would just have their pocket money and spend time in the cafeteria. We would have our lunch boxes like packed lunch, brown bags. So now looking back, I kind of enjoyed it. So it took a lot of preparations. I usually wake 4 in the morning and prepare the food. So
Wow.
all my siblings will have their packed lunches. That's my task.
How did it get to be your job to be the food preparer for all four?
Oh, because I was the easiest to wake up. So my mom didn't really have to do the hard work of waking us up because when I
Lighter
hear
sleeper.
her coming to the room, I'm up.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I'm a light sleeper. So yeah, and I knew when the call time was like 4:30 or 4:15, I would be up at like 4:10, like
Did
5
you
minutes before.
feel like really wanting to help with that, or did you feel like it was something that was pushed upon you?
It wasn't pushed, but I kind of know it was a discipline. There was no forcing. We just knew that each of us had our own responsibilities around the house, and that was it for me. So I would either cook the fried rice and whatever for breakfast, and then pack
Yeah.
lunches for everybody, and or buy the bread early in the morning.
So you felt okay with it. That's good.
Yeah,
The reason I ask is because, like, I see you as a very industrious and hardworking person. I wondered if you're sort of like jumping up, volunteering, and saying, "I'll be the one," or if you're just doing it out of obligation, or if you were doing it
yeah,
a little bit out of
yes, yeah,
resentment. Because I like me growing up, my dad was my dad had a business, and I grew up often being asked to go to work with him, not really being asked, being forced to go to work with him when I didn't
mhm,
expect it. And
mhm,
I thought I was going to be able to play with my friends that day or something. And sometimes I felt a little like it was against my will. So that's why I was curious. Can we go
mhm.
back actually to when your dad left? How old were you then?
15,
Okay.
14 going 15. Yeah.
So obviously an experience that many, many, many people in the Philippines have gone through, a parent or more than one parent, deciding to work abroad during their youth. What do you remember feeling about that?
Oh my. I remember my parents sat us down, all four of us, because my older sister was graduating high school and obviously college after that. And there's really no way we can afford college for everybody at the same time, as well as pay for the house. And so we used to have a car, and then they sat us down and explained in a really calm way. And they weren't really emotional about it. It's just a matter of fact that you kids are going to college soon and we need to save up money and we have a house to pay for. And so we will have the following options: sell the car so we have enough money to help get us by until my father will have a job. So there was really no drama about it. It was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So it is what we weren't really attached to the comforts because we weren't raised comfortably, like comfortably meaning lavish. It was a simple life. If we had to commute, take the jeepney, take the tricycle, or walk, we would. I mean, we don't mind.
Yeah.
And so it was not a difficult conversation. But I remember feeling, okay, so what's going to happen after? Because I was a teenager and where we had to stop school. And for a while, because it took a while before my dad found work abroad, I think two my twin uncles kind of help out with our high school tuition, just so because we were contemplating on moving us to public school. And my uncle said, "No, I'd help." So they pitched in. I mean, that's what's great about family is this what it is. So let's see what we have and let's help each other out. And so that helped us get through another 2 years before my dad found work. And I remember going with him to downtown in Manila to apply in agencies.
Mhm.
I would
Right.
be in charge of photocopying his resumes
You
and
helped them.
putting them in brown envelopes because internet was non-existent.
Of course.
So you would have knocks on every agency in Ermita or in downtown. And yeah, he would get a call or a bail to
And
invite him.
what about like when he actually left? Like what was the feeling for you?
Oh, that was tough.
Yeah, that's
The
tough. Yeah.
first time. Yeah, that was tough. So that was, I think I was 16 when he first got a contract, and initial contract was 2 years.
Hmm.
He can't come home.
Right.
in a 2-year period. And so there was a mix of excitement and anticipation, but at the same time, it was the first time that he was going to be away for that long. And so I was in charge, or I was left at home. They saw him off the airport. And I don't know why I didn't volunteer to go to the airport. I didn't like the prospect of saying goodbye,
Yeah.
like for, so I stayed at home. And that's the most difficult thing. Like, we had breakfast together before his flight, and then they left. I think we rented a jeepney or something. And then so his plate was in the sink, his like clothes neatly folded, and it's surreal. Like, just thinking about it, you can remember how the house kind of smelled within it. That experience, it's so like vivid.
Right.
And
Visceral, still in your memory.
yeah. And I remember like falling, like, but I was alone, so I took my time. I got emotional, of course, only when I was left alone.
Were you, out of the four siblings, out of the four kids, were you pretty, sounds like you were pretty close to him relatively,
Uh,
or?
my dad is he's reticent. He's quiet. He doesn't say much. He's not affectionate. But I'm like more, we understood each other because I feel a certain level of affection because growing up, he would support me in my art, my interest in art.
Nice.
He didn't have much money. So he would set aside and come home with a bit, with a new watercolor set for me. And he would say, just paint, because, even if like he wouldn't, I mean, if in our household, if you buy something for one kid, you have to buy for it for the rest. But he would explain to my siblings that Lorna has a thing for the arts. So, for, and these are like expensive stuff,
Yeah,
like
watercolor.
charcoal pencils,
Right.
watercolors. So the little extras that he did, well, he didn't say much about it, meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So do you think that you intentionally didn't go to the airport because you didn't wanna feel
Yeah.
like you were kinda like didn't wanna feel that pain of him leaving?
Yes. Of course, in my young mind, I really didn't process it that way. I just felt like I'd rather stay home and clean up,
Yeah.
like after everybody, thinking that that's a distraction.
Yeah, we do that, don't
Mhm.
we?
Yeah. But later on in life, I got to process it that way because, yeah, it's difficult. And I remember that was a time we would write because internet is not yet born. So we would write letters every day. We would take turns.
To
Because
him?
every day we would write, yeah, to
Every
him
day?
every day.
Wow.
So four
How long
kids,
did you keep doing that?
the entire time he was in Saudi. So
25
he would,
years?
yeah.
You
So
guys wrote letters to him every day for
every
25
day.
years.
So, well,
That
there
is
was four of us,
incredible.
five including my mom. So 5 days a week, he would get letters and it's sequence. So I would be in charge of, because I was already in college a couple of years when he was in Saudi, I would be in charge of going to the post office and mailing the letters because I went to school in Papua and the post office was right there, right across the terminal. And so it was my job to drop the letters in the post office, like the central post office of the Philippines. Just nostalgic
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
And he would reply. My dad is a very good writer.
Wow.
And he would
How
reply
often?
every time. Like his
Every
letters have numbers on them. Like
like this he would write one back that's
one back.
replying to many of
So
yours?
yes, yes. And he was I replied to the letters one by one, I mean, like
Oh
line
my
by
god, that's
line.
amazing.
It is. And I kept one letter. I left it's in Cebu. It's my mentor from him. I found it in one of his stuff right after he passed away. We were cleaning up around the house. It was an exchange that he and I had. I think I was an adult. He was almost retiring. I think I was over 30 years old. I think I was 32, 33. And it was this where he said, I never got to witness you guys growing up. So I'm amazed at how wonderful you turned out. And I can speak to you like an adult, like, because
Right.
as far as he's concerned, he's only been with us for 2 years straight.
Yeah.
He's only home a month every year for 25 years.
How did that make you feel when he said that?
Oh, wow. I would treasure that. There's kind of, if you had an option, like if he was, you kind of wish my dad was entrepreneur, so we would have our own business and everybody would be here together. Things would have been different. But that's kind of, I processed that it had to happen the way it did for us all to turn out the way we did.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a matter of accepting that it had to be that way. And he taught us a lot about discipline and commitment and diligence, sacrifice.
I just want to say, like, the world we live in now where we have the ability to jump on a video call, send messages on WhatsApp or Messenger anytime we want.
Yeah.
And we have that instant accessibility, even if somebody is on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
Yet I find it, like, my daughter right now is in the US, and I find it really challenging to get that, to maintain that kind of discipline and consistency in connecting when people are not with you. And the fact that you
Mm.
guys were able to maintain that on both sides, that he replied to every message systematically
Yes.
for 25 years, actually
Yeah.
blows my mind. And it really just makes me think how you guys prioritized that clearly. So I'm kind of curious, like, how was it your mom? Was it your dad? Like, who was the initiator or the main driver of creating that commitment to keep connected while he was gone for those 25 years?
I'd like to say both. I think they have this agreement between the two of them. Because okay, so the thing, my dad would start his letter, Dear Lorna, here's in reply to your letter number
Yeah. So your mom and
55,
dad
whatever.
agreed to this, like, that.
Yes.
So they had this shared value that we got to stay connected when, even though I'm going abroad, we
Yes.
have to keep our family.
And then they would have like once or every 2 months, we would be able to afford a long distance call, like an overseas call
Right.
in our neighbor's house because we didn't
Hmm.
have the,
Landline or the
international
international.
dialing
Yeah,
thingy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the neighbor would like host the, the calling party and we would each write what we want to share with him because time is limited. So, okay,
So you're
dad, it's
prepared.
your turn. You come prepared, and then you pass the
Oh
phone
my
to your
god.
sister or your brother, and then that's that.
Leadership
Yeah.
training already.
Yes, and yeah, that was my mom because my mom would be sitting there and waiting for her turn, obviously. So when each of us has had our turn, we would go home, and she would be there. Yeah, they'd tell.
What about your mom? Did she work at all during those
She
years, or
used to work, but earlier. I think we were not even 6 when she stopped working, but she used to work at the U.S. Embassy. Yeah, for
cool.
3 years, for a good 3 years. And then she decided, well, they decided, that's what we're told, that she was to stay at home because there was 4 of us and we couldn't afford full-time house help.
Right,
And so it was more practical
right.
for her. But she's enterprising. She's the one that taught us how to, you should know what to do when you wake up in the morning. You can't wake up in the middle of the day thinking, what am I going to do? Where am I going to eat? Right. So before you sleep at night, you have to plan out your day, next day. Right. And
She sounds
so,
like a systems thinker and kind of
oh, yes, my
organized.
goodness. And around this time, oh my goodness, this brings back really good memories around this time. So this is to be our last week in school, right? And so to help, well, ease our expenses throughout the holidays because everybody was on break and yada yada, she would take orders. She knew how to bake. So all our neighbors would order and we would be like a bakery at home. She invested in an oven, a simple oven. She would teach us how to bake and we would have dozens and dozens cake orders, like every kind that you can think of. And the house smelled like a bakery. But that helped raise funds for our, like our living
Right.
allowances because my dad was primarily responsible for tuition and the major expenses. And my mom, I think, helped with electric bills and utilities and
Nice.
our meals. So they were a tag team that way. She was the disciplinarian between the two of them, and she would do accounting. Growing up, she didn't give us allowance for a week or for 2 weeks. She would give us, I remember in high school, our allowance was 10 pesos. And in college, it was 50 pesos. It was enough transportation fare because we had packed lunches. We didn't have to spend money at a McDonald's.
Right.
Even if everybody went to McDonald's, you can't afford McDonald's. So here, have a sandwich or your rice. I mean, so she would account. Like if you had leftover like transportation, you'd have a spare change of say 5 or 6 pesos.
Yeah.
She would give you enough to make it the
Do
full
you
amount
think
in following day.
I would love to transition a little bit into kind of like your adult life, but I'm curious if you could maybe what's one mindset or habit or way of looking at the world that you got from, let's say, your mom or either of your parents, but what's one belief or way of looking at the world that you feel like you really appreciate? And like, what's one that you kind of had to let go of?
The both of them instilled humility. Be yourself. Simple is enough, right? So
Yeah.
because it's easy to compare yourself like, how come we don't have this? How come you can't buy me that? And even if it's a haircut that we're wanting to get, right? And my mom would say, you don't have to wear the same haircut as everybody else to look cool. You can
Yeah.
wear your hair simple and carry yourself. Just put a smile on your face.
So they trained you
That's it.
not to to be disentangled from the fear of other people's opinions, like not,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
not living your life under that
My dad put
pressure.
it was the first time I've heard the expression, we don't have to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
So, and I had to look it up because obviously I didn't know.
What do you know with that? Yeah.
but,
Yeah. Joneses.
but
I don't know any
yeah,
Joneses.
I know, right? Because in the Philippines. But yeah, he said it's not going to be enough if your eye is constantly
Looking.
looking
Yeah.
outside.
That's a great one. What about something that, maybe a mindset or a way of thinking that you got from family or culture that you had to let go of later that you realized wasn't serving you?
Well, in the Philippines, we have pwede na yan, do it half-heartedly or half-baked. Pwede na yan,
Good
it
enough?
can
Something
pass.
like
Good
that?
enough.
Yeah.
That's good
Yeah.
enough, right? And both of them just, is it when you're 100%? Because if it's not, it's not. So, so it's always an internal question. Yeah, the question of excellence. They didn't expect perfection. In fact, the other way. When we went through school and whatnot, they didn't expect us to be with high honors or bring home the medal or whatnot. They just asked us to be diligent, show up for class. The only reason why we can't show up for class is if classes were canceled or if we were in the hospital. That's it. If it was a slight fever,
Yeah.
go take your medicine every 4 hours, like that. And then they would say showing up is a huge chunk
Half the
of,
battle, something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
of pursuing excellence.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if you got 50 out of 100, you doing your 100%, if it's your 100%, they didn't really make a big deal out of you have to be first honor,
So
second
so
honor.
so they taught you to show up and be fully engaged, like put your full energy
Yes,
into it.
yes,
That's
and
great.
stay in your lane.
Sounds like your parents were a really good
Yeah,
combination, like the two of them working together to give you guys those values and
yeah,
discipline.
yeah,
Really nice.
yes. Even in that aspect, they shared a lot of common values and instilled, made sure that we all understood. Like if they were to buy a sibling something and not everybody will get it. There usually is an explanation that accompanies the thing.
Yeah. So
And
maybe that's a good lesson for parents out there is like not everything has to be fair all the time, but just people do need to understand. So
mhm,
just put the effort into explaining your decisions. I know that's
yes.
the one thing that used to drive me crazy when I was a kid is like when my parents would make arbitrary decisions that I couldn't understand and
Mm,
just unilateral, like authoritarian it felt. And like if I could understand it, I'm fine with it. But if I can't understand it, I really resented it or
yeah.
fought against it.
Yeah, there were episodes that, your young mind would not be able to absorb or understand in the way that they expected to understand. So, in a way, there was not resentment. It's a strong word, but you feel
Confusion.
bad, you feel sad
Yeah.
that you feel like your needs isn't being prioritized,
Mm.
etc. But,
Stories speak for
time goes
themselves.
by, it's just, you
Yeah.
know, mm,
Let's jump into like after you graduated. What year did you graduate?
That's the funny thing. I did not graduate college, Eli. So I spent 3.5 years in engineering school and I started working, I was 17. And when I started working, I saw how I could excel and be really active and engaged in my workplace. And I got the, I guess, validation that I can contribute something. I have a good head on my shoulders. And I can participate and ask questions and work with my mentors or my managers at the time. And I really observed how people conducted their work, did their work. Like, and I remember I was 18. No, yeah, I celebrated 18th birthday in the office with my T square and my thing because I was doing my homework and my supervisor pulled me aside and said, "Here, we have a simple birthday thingy for you because I know you don't have time to party later. So it was only during break time." So I got really touched by that. And then they said, "You're really good at what you do. So whatever it is, I think you're going to do well." And so that came from my manager. And I really got the biggest break, Eli. I was, I think, 2 years into that job. So I was 20. I was not even graduated college. I was an irregular student. And I would work graveyard shift from 10 in the evening till 6 in the morning. And then I would go home and take a nap from like 8 to 12. And then I would be at school from 2 o'clock till 8 in the evening.
Wow.
So that was my life for a couple of years. And then I think your work can be my university or life can be my university. Because
Exactly.
look at all these people that teach me all the things I now know. I go to school and my teachers would ask questions, practical business questions. So business math, engineering, etc. And I would have something to contribute and I would be like confident
Yeah.
because that's
Because
real
you,
world experience for me.
right.
Management principles, yada, yada. But I've already learned that in my supervisory development program for 1 Minute Manager, how you affirm, how you support, how to advocate for your team members, etc. And those are big words when you're in university. And what is she talking about? And then my teacher would go, "To earn a grade, why don't you teach my class?" And I go, "Wait, I'm working so I can pay tuition and then I'm going to teach a class."
Was that a genuine, authentic, go ahead and do it? Or was that a kind of like, you're stepping on my toes?
I don't know what, well,
Not
I
sure.
took it to mean like positive thing, but I don't know whether there was shade in it. Yeah,
I'm
because
guessing there might be.
she pulled me aside after class
Like, hey,
and
you know
then
more than me. Stop it.
something like, yeah. But looking back, that was a deciding moment for me to take a leave of absence. My intention was just to pause
Pause.
and refocus and see.
But you never came back.
I never came back.
Okay, let's stop here for a second and dig into this a little bit. Okay. What did your parents say when you took a leave of absence?
That's the thing with my parents. They didn't, it was a discussion and they saw how I was enjoying my work. Practically, I was earning, right? Helping pay the mortgage, blah, blah, blah. And I was enjoying. I would come home and it's like coming home from school, excited to tell stories about school, right? Only in my case, it was stories
Yeah.
about work and the
Yeah.
people I encountered, the projects I'm working on, the
Right.
things I'm learning, etc. And so we never really had a focused discussion about it.
Yeah.
It just came to pass because all my siblings have, graduated, completed college, and it was just me. And I think that's also another reason why I overcompensated
Yeah.
because the next 10 years, 15 years of my life were just focused on work as if it was my
And I've
university and I had to prove something, right?
and I've heard a bit of this story, and I definitely think it's where we want to spend some of our time. But just before we go into that, I think there's so many people all across the world, not just in the Philippines, but
Mm,
definitely a lot of people here who, because they didn't either, let's just say because they didn't finish school, that they think they can't, right? It's like, well, I can't get this job. I can't get that job because I didn't finish school. And
mm,
you're here saying, pretty sure I'm getting it
mm,
right. Are you saying, I learned a hell of a lot more at school than I did, I mean, at work than I was in school, right? And yeah, so I really want to help people realize that it's not necessary. It's not 100% necessary to have the degree. You actually get so much more learning when you engage in the real world of what's going on than you do at school anyway. So the piece of paper, like you never
Hmm.
got it. You never got the degree, right?
No,
What could you share with people out there who might be feeling like, well, I didn't finish school and that really limits me? Any
on
thoughts?
hindsight, thank you. That's a beautiful question. So on hindsight, I got rejected countless times because I applied for fast food jobs. 7-Elevens rejected me. I was overqualified, right? So either I'm too short or I'm overqualified. So those are the only two reasons after applying at 10, 15 jobs.
And were you applying at those places because you didn't have the degree?
Yes, I was in second year
Yeah.
college. And those were the only jobs available to 18-year-olds at the time. And so after one weekend, one of our neighbors, her, it's a small town, and they knew that my twin and I were looking for jobs, and so she said, "Come with me. I have work." At the time she was maybe in her 30s, and my shift starts at 6 to 2, and I thought it was a factory. I don't mind. Yes, go ahead.
So you would
Six
do
o'clock.
anything, right?
I
You'd
would do
work fast
anything at
food, you'd
that
work
point. Oh
7-Eleven, you'd
my
work in a
god.
factory,
I
but
was
then
ready to wash dishes and wait tables, although I didn't have a clue how to
yeah,
do that. But she said, "Come with me. I pick you up at your house at 5 o'clock in the morning because the shift starts at 6. You have to be there at 6, but the interview will not happen until 8. But let me bring you so you won't get lost or whatever." So anyway, I brought my resume, blah, blah, blah. And that was a BPO job. It was in the mid 90s. It was in 1994, 1993, no, 94. And so it was litigation support. All we were required to do was read documents, legal documents, and condense them or do abstracts, summaries, etc. So it's like, oh my goodness, like I loved reading and I loved studying and I loved working with people. So how about that? So I landed an apprenticeship, 2 month apprenticeship. Salary was like 2,500 pesos a
mhm,
month.
yeah,
And so that really opened the door for me. And so I said to my interviewer, I'm not even 18. So I don't have a degree. I don't have an experience, but I love reading. I love learning. Is there something that I can try doing in this office? And so I was given that apprenticeship. And then I wasn't supposed to pass. There was a mistake. It's a very sensitive line of work, because it's all legal. And when you miss a name, that speaks
disqualifies you
volumes.
supposedly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That could impact your future. And so I pleaded. They didn't send me my renewal. And so I pleaded. And it's a good thing my supervisor knew how hard I worked and she vouched for me. And then the rest is history.
nice.
So I stayed in that job for 8 years.
So I have a deep belief from stories I've heard of so many people in so many places, including here, and the way that I know relationships work in business, and I know the way the world works well enough to be very confident that this is true, that if anyone makes a decision to love learning, to work really hard, to show up and figure out what are the needs in this place, that you could always find an opportunity to learn on the job. And like, so deeply believe in the concept that regardless of what school you went to or didn't go to school at all, that if you have that mindset, you can learn anything and you go find, like through your network, through relationships, you can find some place and say, I will come here and just take out the trash for free until I see enough opportunity to be valuable that you guys give me a little bit better job and maybe someday pay me. Or you never do, but at least I learned something. And if people would actually go do these things, they would end up learning so much and become more valuable. And you just kind of ratchet it up, step it up. And I didn't know that you started working before you graduated and then never finished school, but I actually love that story. I didn't go to school at all. I was homeschooled. I have no high school diploma. I have no degree. I never cared. And yeah, so I think that's a very powerful story. And
Yeah, it's an attitude of learning. It's a mindset, right? So you can work hard through high school and college and earn that diploma. And if you stop learning, what you know then will no longer be applicable now.
right,
Right. So and
exactly.
that's always been my motto is as you grow as a person, there has to be this discomfort. you unlearn and you learn, you unlearn and you learn.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's a never ending process. It's not spoken for by a 11 by 8 piece of
Piece of
paper
paper. Yeah.
that tells
You know,
the world that you made it.
and I think that's a really critical point that you're talking about is that when we believe that we cannot get a job because we don't have that piece of paper, all you're really looking at is that most companies have a recruitment process that
Hmm.
require that the first requirement that the recruiters look at is, do you have a piece of paper? And if the answer is no, they don't even talk to you, right? So that just means you probably can't go through that process to get
Hmm.
into certain companies. But there's so many other ways that you can find opportunities, and you don't need to. It's really all about
And
relationships, I think. What do you think?
correct. Oh, I so agree. It's not a walk in the park to be able to prove that you can think critically as well as a college graduate, right? So there's continuous self-development that needs to happen. And it's not that I don't support earning a degree. Of course I do,
Yeah.
right?
Not I'm also
But if
not I'm not saying don't earn
yeah,
it, don't finish, but you
if
don't have to.
if your means are limited, you can be creative. So to me, that's just a creative way of addressing the need at the time instead of forcing myself to wallow in self pity and, oh,
Yeah.
poor me, I didn't get a college degree, therefore I'll just waste away. That kind of ignited something that I'll show what I can do.
I'll show
Not
what
out of
you do.
spite,
Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I'll
I can.
show that there is something that can be done with limited
Yeah.
resource. And that's a big shift in mindset because I almost relate that to how there was a time in my life growing up. My dad had suffered a stroke. He was unemployed for 2 years. And we had to like look all throughout the house, right? Looking for like loose change to buy breakfast. And the universe provides you with opportunities, whatever it is. If you stay humble, feet on the ground, you just tell the neighbor, like, the situation at our house, but here I have a job. My pay just hasn't come in yet. Can I borrow? Right. And then you make good on that promise. And then the neighbors would start supporting you. Instead
Yeah.
of you coming to them, they ask you, hey, do you still have? It's okay, pay when able. And that to me is the human side of connection, building relationships, to your point. Not everybody is out there to get you, but you can definitely do something with what you have.
Yeah. So you just mentioned self-development and this kind of self-belief that I can figure this out. I'm going to go show that I can do this. Like, where did you get that from? Because a lot of people don't have that, right? They think I can't, but you said I
Mm,
can.
tenacity. My mom would tell her, it's up and down, right? And then she said, stand up. In Filipino, we call it laban or fight in English, right?
Yeah.
She would say. And that would boost us, our energy or whatever. Laban lang, kaya yan. Whether it's
Yeah.
a heartbreak or a job loss or an unsuccessful project or a failed grade for crying out loud. Hello, differential calculus. And then we didn't hear like, well. No, she didn't do that.
So she had your
She,
back. She's like, you've got this. Stand
she
strong.
would just say,
You got this.
fight.
Yeah. Love it.
It was simple. It was not a long-winded discussion about
Yeah.
why I need to excel. Of
Yeah.
course, I already knew that.
And I would say that my mom did something similar for me, and I think it was huge that when I was young, she made me feel like I could do anything. She made me feel like I was smart and special and you can do this, and I think that really went a long way for
Mm,
me putting myself in situations that were outside my competency zone, outside my comfort zone, and that's how I grew and learned the most. For people that don't have parents telling them they can do it, what do you
mhm.
recommend? What do you think could they do to get that kind of belief?
Encouragement goes a long way. Even if the kid is not a stellar student, no, when they know that they're supported, however the outcome looks like, it means it could change the outcome. So if we're not too focused on the end result,
In the short term?
you'll be amazed that kids can be creative and they can grow wings faster than
Yeah.
if you force them to grow wings. And yeah, I think that's the value. I'm 47 years old now, and I wouldn't trade. the lessons that both my parents and my family modeled for us is you don't pin yourself to other people's opinions. Like by this age, you have to be that. Like this, like there's some conversations that revolved around other kids getting way ahead in terms of financial accomplishments by a
Yeah.
certain
Yeah.
age, but it never really stuck there. So it was just a conversation. Oh, I'm glad that so and so person landed a job in the UN or was sent to Europe or whatever. And but that didn't
Isn't
become like
isn't it
a
funny how humans can like we get this idea that there's some prescribed path or
uh-huh.
pace of
Mm.
milestones that we're supposed to reach. It's just the way it works. Like our journeys are all different, right?
Now, yeah, it took me a
You know
long
that now.
time to realize that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all valuable and you can't put a price tag on lessons like that. Those are real life experiences that
Yes.
forge.
So I know you have so much more to tell us, and I think we're going to have more conversations again in the future. But for today, let's go ahead and kind of give an overview of what was your next kind of working life years. You referenced earlier or alluded to the fact that you kind of got really heads down into the career path, something like that. Is that
I did.
so?
That's
Kind of
yes,
like
that's it.
let's fast forward a bit and kind of say what was that part of your life like, and then where did you go from there?
Yeah. So the first job where I stayed 8 years fast tracked my advancement career wise because I got promoted twice in like 3, 4 years. And for an
Like,
undergrad, it
a-
was
and you got promoted because you're still this person who loves learning and shows up every day and just like puts all the
yeah, I
effort in, right?
applied. Like I applied to any vacancy and volunteered for any volunteer opportunities. I rotated like every department I worked in volunteered for at least 3 months at a time, except accounting. So IT, like library resource center.
Nice.
So we have 1,200 employees at the time, and I met a lot of people, a lot of people. And so fast forward to 2001, 9/11 happened and the projects started dwindling. And I kind of intuitively, there's a risk that I might be able to hold on to this job any longer than the next 2 years, right? So I started looking for new opportunities. And so my sister happens to be working with a company and a friend of their client was looking for a virtual assistant. This was in 2003.
What is a virtual assistant back then? Hardly
Back
nobody
then,
knows. That's like
right?
the
My
early
goodness.
days.
Uh-huh. And I go, "Oh, is that a scam?"
Do I
But
have to be virtual? Can I be
yes,
real? Just
yes. Is this
virtual?
a real person? Are they gonna pay me? And so, yeah, that I met John Engel, who's an entrepreneur. He's based in Connecticut, and he has a startup business, and his office is his garage. So he founded paper.com. And so my job was to update product listings, answer chat inquiries. So there was no Skype yet at the time. We were Yahoo Messenger and Live Person. It's a chat console that you embed in the website, similar to how Messenger works now, right? So, but then we had to do a lot of coding. Of course, I didn't know coding at the time, but he was patient enough in teaching me the ropes and was very patient with me. Like after I blew up $2,500 one night on an ad campaign that didn't work, he said, I would rather have spent $2,500 you learning a lesson than not having spent that amount of money and you showing up the way you did
That's
last
awesome
year,
to be able
whatever.
to work with somebody like that. That's how you learn. Allow space for mistakes and learning.
Exactly.
Awesome.
So that company turned into, so by myself, I started hiring people to do different kinds of things. And that gave birth to call center operation in 2004 up to 2011.
As paper.com was growing.
Yes, as paper.com. And then we started acquiring new clients, et cetera, et cetera. So by the time I exited and they refocused their operations, we were 275 employees strong.
Wow.
And so to me, that was the equivalent of corporate because I found, I worked with so many clients, mentors, CEOs that really pushed me to go out of your comfort zone or not. Like, yeah. And I would sit around conference tables across gentlemen from different countries, and I learned a lot, right? So that developed my ethic for it's not a small business anymore, and you can talk corporate and be do your due diligence, your research, your assessments, and be curious. You ask questions and direct. Don't beat around the bush like that. So I learned a lot, and that was my like I consider my postgraduate, my business school,
For
because when you're
sure.
hanging out with business people, they start talking about mergers and acquisitions. What did I know about mergers and acquisitions? Of course, I had to learn. So I bought a book, The 7-Day MBA, and devoured it. Like, boom. So I felt so extra confident that but it's all like practical. And then when you're exposed to real world scenarios and then you ask questions why it's not like the textbook, and then you get insights from people who've been there, who's like 20 years my senior, and who really helps me understand the world of business in a much better way. Up to now, they're still my friends and I consider them
Amazing.
mentors. They're retired and stuff like that. So yeah, so
So
that's
you
my fast forward.
and I think it's an amazing story that you were this curious self-teacher that created opportunities by showing up and putting the work in. And then as people saw that energy and effort that you were putting in and the way that you could learn and going and getting jobs in different departments and building a bigger mental map of the way business works, you start getting invited into more opportunities. So you were employee number one at paper.com as the VA, basically.
Mhm.
And so you helped grow that,
Yes.
like you really kind of drove growing that to be the company that it was. If I'm not mistaken, it got acquired by
Yeah,
a bigger brand.
it got acquired by a marketing company and got sold to Office Depot, if I'm not
Or
mistaken.
Staples or something,
Yeah.
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 And then, yeah, so, like, I now know you're not in that corporate path anymore, so what kinda changed?
Oh, wow. So 6 years ago, I landed in Cebu and I was having a life change. And I got to revisit my corporate because I lived and breathed work. I lived in the same building where I worked for close to 7 years. So it was all work. I was never visible in gatherings almost, right? So, and so coming to Cebu, I had some time to reflect and saw an opportunity with the digital work environment where I can be remote and be as effective, applying the same discipline, but independent. And so I wanted to have that mindset and equip others. And so I had this opportunity to share digital work can be sustainable if you show up, if you are diligent, if you are proactive, if you communicate. So all the disciplines that are present in any corporate environment, even if you're doing it alone in the comfort of your home office, it could work for you. You could retain client, no question, right? So and then the pandemic happened, right? So my shift was really to equip now, like Lorna, share with others how corporate discipline, professionalism, and all that, showing up on time every time gets to be a model for building your own business. So I'm not an entrepreneurial, I'm not an entrepreneurship graduate. Okay, a business school graduate, but I know practical business. What you want done to you, you do for
Yeah,
others. If you
learning
want,
just
yeah.
understanding the problem, understanding the person that you're serving.
And then the technicalities, if something needs clarity, seek clarity. You can't assume that you know everything because you won't ever, right? There's always going to be people better than you doing certain things. And so you must be open to engaging those people to be on your team and collaborate. So there's enough opportunities out there for everybody. And so my business model has always been considered odd in the last 6 years. I had an opportunity to get pitched by an investor who wanted to acquire YOVEO.
Your digital marketing agency.
Yes. And then they asked me the business model and I shared it with them. I'm really a solopreneur, but I equip other freelancers to build their own businesses, even if it's a solo practice. but just to make it sustainable to work for them and be able to support their families without like striking the imbalance of working nonstop and just there's a lack, right? So now it's a balance for me. I'm able to participate in communities and share. So those small business owners, startups, any business owner or freelancer who need guidance, okay, we can collaborate on some projects. And if they're ready to take it on their own, we do that. So I'm happy if I see somebody having a sustainable income source of income based off of a relationship that initially started in a classroom. And so I wanted to replicate that model. And by working with social enterprises and nonprofits now, that audience has expanded for me. And so when I have clients that reach out to me and ask if I can do this, I say yes because I can identify a handful of people that can do it, not just me.
Right.
If they
So
want
you've
me in the equation, they can hire me for a project, project manage,
yeah.
or if not, I just directly endorse and
So you
handhold them
so
for a while. Go ahead.
you've built this agency where the model is really about helping other people learn how to kind of manage their own clients, show up,
Mm,
deliver the value that you can deliver in the world, learn how to get that across and get paid for it. And you've built that in such a way that you're more clearly more empowering, more interested in empowering and growing other people than you are making money, which is
mm,
amazing. How did you develop such a giving philosophy, like wanting to help other people more than just creating? Because a lot of people assume business is just a thing to make the owners wealthy, but you're not
mm.
doing it that way. Like what led you to see it that to choose this path?
Eli, I was given the opportunity that I never thought I would ever get, like given the limitations I had at the time. And I had unlimited access to resource people that have been generous in sharing their experiences and their expertise with me. And so the cycle continues. I mean, I can only hold so much.
Yeah.
And I guess it varies. No, I wouldn't necessarily prescribe that everybody I'm not a charity, right? But I find so much more meaning and fulfillment in being able to help others build their own kingdoms. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have my little garden that I cultivate. And when it's time to harvest, I harvest. When it's time to plant, I plant. So everybody, if there's an overflow there and somebody stops by and says, "Hey, can
Yep.
I share in this bounty?" And I go, "Yeah, why not?" Right? I know that cultivating and growing and planting never stops anyway. So
Yeah.
it's just seasonal. And that has really expanded my, not just my network, but the depth of
Relationships.
relationships that I
Yeah.
have. It goes beyond one project.
Yeah.
And I count that as abundance already. I have more than enough for myself. I take care of myself. I mean, I'm not like
Yeah.
struggling to like, but I really
I
want
was
people to have that appreciation for if you want to connect, but connect with the intention of it's an exchange, right?
I was gifted a book, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago by Manny Ayala, who's the head
Mm,
of an entrepreneur organization called Endeavor Philippines,
mhm.
but it's called Give and Take by Adam Grant. And this book is all about the reciprocity styles that people develop in the world. And people can either be givers, matchers, or takers based on their
Profile.
learned way of
Mhm.
exchanging a reciprocity. And I personally believe that we can all be givers, even if we don't think we have resources. And the way to build amazing relationships and build success in life is actually better. The most successful people in the world are actually givers. And clearly you've adopted a similar mindset. It's like just give value and you'll always have what you need. It seems like you've adopted that. So
Yeah.
I recommend.
Yeah. And success is relative. Like, I really have, how do I say it?
Would you
I,
define most people would define success when you say that word, they think of finances or freedom, just
mm,
resources, but how would you define success for yourself in
it's
your world?
being, it's having the freedom to give and not take, but receive. So now I'm learning that success ultimately is if you have a means to give, be free to give. Don't feel like you're hindered or fearful that you might not have enough. Success is being able to free ourselves from, okay, but what happens if?
Like
So
the
the
scarcity mindset kind of
scarcity
thing.
mentality, when you think you're abundant, then you're successful, regardless of how much or how little you have. Even that how much or little is relative to, it's based on comparison, right? So, but if you stay focused on what you have and, okay, is this, I'm grateful for this. Can I give some to others?
Yeah.
Yes. But if you look elsewhere and they have a bigger pot, and all of a sudden what you have is so small and it's not
Mm.
enough for you, right? So I consider myself successful only because I'm continuing to learn and discover that I might not have a fat bank account, but I know relationship that I have, well, I can't put a price tag on them. And that's, to me, call it cliche, but that's really what's more important to me is the longevity of my relationships, the depth,
Yeah.
and yeah, there's just so many opportunities in the world, especially in this day and age. And if we can learn to share knowledge, skills, time, energy, and if people are willing to receive and make good out of that generosity, ideal, yeah, probably, but
No,
I have that to drive
that's
me
your
forward.
worldview. That's the
Yeah,
worldview
that's
you've
my, yeah.
adopted. Yeah. No, I think that's so well said. And it's really hard to shift from a scarcity view of the world, thinking that there's not enough, to believing in abundance. And I've seen people do it without any change in their financial situation. I know I did it when I had nothing. Like I was absolutely had nothing. And I shifted from scarcity energy to abundance energy. It probably took me almost a year to kind of I think, relatively completely do it, but there was no change in my financial status when I did that. But later there was so much more abundance in my life. And one, just listening to your story, the very simple but so incredibly powerful and true quote from Henry Ford, which is just, if you think you can or you think you can't, either way you're right. And it just seems to me to be kind of a
Yeah.
summary of a lot of your story that I've heard today.
Oh, yeah.
I
Thank
know
you, Eli.
I know you have so much more to share that could be very meaningful for people, but also it's a long conversation already that I know you have other things to do today and family to spend time with. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share your stories. And I hope that people listening, I know people who listen will take something away. If somebody wanted to learn more from you, is there a way that they could find, any of your work or connect with you? Is there?
Absolutely. So my website is www.joveo, that's YOVEO digital.com. And then you can also find me on Facebook. I share a lot of insights in my interest areas span. I don't know. I have creative spurts here and there and nuggets when I read. I love reading. So you can find me online on Facebook, on LinkedIn. Yeah, and just connect. I mean, Eli's a perfect channel to learn like stuff from. He's like a wealth, a treasure trove of like quotes and business people, interesting stories. So hang out with him. You'll find me there.
I really appreciate the relationship that we've built over the last number of years. And
Yeah,
thank you for
amazing.
the people you've connected me to and just being a great friend. And yeah, thanks for this conversation today.
Thank you, Eli. I wish you and your family a happy holidays. I'll see you when I get back. We need to hang out and have breakfast or brunch or whatever.
Sounds good. Talk
Yeah,
soon.
talk soon.
Thank you so much for listening to this interview on Emerge Stories. We really hope that something here sparked your curiosity or maybe helped you think about something in your life just from a little bit of a different angle or perspective, maybe opened up your mind to something you might be able to do in your life to take more ownership of your own learning and growth. That's the goal of this show. So please join our community, like and share, and tell other people about these stories if they're meaningful for you. And thanks so much for being here.